It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. Pressure on Keir Starmer as the veteran Labour MP Diane Abbott angrily accuses him of trying to stop her standing at the election.
I'm not going to allow myself to be intimidated.
But pressure too on Rishi Sunak as a poll for Sky News suggests Labour's lead is widening. Also tonight, jurors in New York retire to decide whether or not Donald Trump is guilty of criminal charges. Israel warns that the war in Gaza could last into next year as new evidence suggests a US-made weapon was used in a devastating strike in Rafah. In Iceland, an erupting volcano forces thousands of people to flee their homes. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Good evening. It's a week into the election campaign and the leaders of the two main parties are struggling to keep order in their ranks. For Sir Keir Starmer, there's anger over the fate of the veteran Labour MP Diane Abbott, who has publicly accused him of trying to prevent her from standing. And for Rishi Sunak, there's Conservative dissent over his decision to call an early election after the first exclusive YouGov poll of the campaign for Sky News indicated that Labour has extended its lead. Our deputy political editor, Sam Coates, reports.
We stand with Diane! We stand with Diane!
The country's first black MP, one of her party's longest-serving veterans. But is Diane Abbott a Labour candidate at this election? She believes the answer is no.
I was shocked to learn yesterday that I am going to be banned from running for the Labour Party.
A surprise guest at a rally with supporters in her constituency. She said she'd had no contact from the party.
It is as if you are not allowed to be a Labour MP unless you're prepared to repeat everything the leader says.
And a threat to stand as an independent in the Hackney seat she's held for nearly 40 years.
By any means possible, I will be the candidate for Hackney North and Stoke Newington.
Her leader said earlier in the day she's not been banned, or at least not yet.
That's not true. No decision has been taken to bar Diane Abbott. The process that we were going through ended with the restoration of the whip the other day. So she's a member of the Parliamentary Labour Party, and no decision has been taken barring her. Everybody in?
He wanted today to be about his pledge to cut NHS waiting lists, but some in his own party are aghast at the treatment of one of Labour's most famous faces. The row unlikely to dent Labour's confidence, though. The first exclusive Sky News YouGov poll of the race shows Labour is 27 points ahead of the Conservatives. Tory MPs tell me they worry that this shows that number 10 has made a miscalculation. Rishi Sunak's team called this election to start moving voters in their direction. But our poll shows that they either aren't listening or don't like what they've seen from the Tories. One minister said today they just don't think Rishi Sunak is good enough at politics. Even friendly voters can't escape noticing that gap.
What I do see in the mornings is these polls, and you're quite a way behind Labour at the moment. How much confidence do you have that those polls are a true reflection of 6 weeks' time?
The only poll that matters is the one on July 4th, when all of you get to choose our future, right? That's the one that I'm focused on. And as you can see, I hope, I am working my socks off.
Oh, boom! Right, thank you very much.
Announcing today more funding for apprenticeships, but the polling has many on the right looking to the future beyond this election.
But yeah, that was a perfect splice if you're looking for a job in telecom.
Yeah. There we go. Right, there you go.
Is this man pitching to join the fight for the soul of the Tory party?
I got rid of Mrs May with the Brexit Party. I stood aside for Boris to help a massive majority. What are they going to do back for me? I've done them some huge favours over the years as a party. Give me something back. We might have a conversation.
Rishi Sunak is not the only leader under pressure to move further from the centre. But with the polls against him, is he strong enough to resist that drift?
And Sam joins us live now from Westminster. Sam, we've seen a furious Diane Abbott saying she will not be intimidated. But how damaging is all of this for Keir Starmer?
Look, I think that Keir Starmer has clearly calculated that he can weather this row, even though I understand that his office are surprised at the scale of the commotion that it's caused, and his handling of this whole issue has been undermined by divisions amongst the people around him about quite what to do with Diane Abbott. But clearly also this has caused hurt in the wider Labour family. Yet again, Keir Starmer has decided that a 27-point poll lead, which is what the Sky YouGov poll advantage for Labour over the Tories had today, coupled with a desire to remain close as possible to the Jewish community. Diane Abbott, of course, suspended over her comments about Jewish people and anti-Semitism in the first place, is the priority that he wants to stick to. However, when you look at that Sky YouGov poll, there is a fascinating paradox, because Keir Starmer might be well ahead in this general election, Barbara, but he also is coming in potentially as quite an unpopular Prime Minister. 47% of people in our poll said that they thought he would make a bad Prime Minister. If he gets in, he's going to have to make difficult decisions, and he will probably become quickly unpopular. At that point, you need your army to defend you, the wider Labour family. And so at that point, how allied, how faithful, how loyal will a hurting wider Labour family be, and how prepared will they be to defend Keir Starmer at a moment of trouble?
Sam Coates, our Deputy Political Editor, with the latest from Westminster. Sam, thank you. Well, the leaders of the two main parties have confirmed that they will go head-to-head in their first televised election debate. It'll take place on ITV on June the 4th. Sky News will also be giving voters the opportunity to put questions directly to the leaders at our own event in our target town of Grimsby, with both Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer invited to attend. Well, the event is part of Sky's wider coverage of the target towns of Grimsby and Cleethorpes, which will form a new constituency at the election. The traditional red wall seat of Grimsby has returned a Labour MP in every election between 1945 and 2017, until 2019, when it returned a Conservative MP. Cleethorpes became a constituency in 1997. In recent years, it's voted Conservative, but it was a Labour stronghold until 2010. Well, in the new combined Great Grimsby and Cleethorpes constituency, Labour would need a swing of 11.7% to win the seat from the Conservatives in July. Our national correspondent, Tom Parmenter, has been meeting people in Cleethorpes to ask what they'd like to ask at a leaders' debate, and he sent us this report.
Dave buys and sells pretty much anything. His family-run shop on the Grimsby Road in Cleethorpes does exactly what it says on the front.
People are selling the family heirlooms where they can't hold on to what they cherish the most. Yeah. So, it's sad. Yeah. If you want a closer look at anything, just let me know.
1 week into this election, who has impressed his customers?
I don't look at the party, I look for the people and how they... I thought Rishi was good, but he's not showing his performance well, so we need to have a change.
It sounds like you feel a bit of sympathy for him, though.
Not sympathy.
No?
No. The leader should be... If you're a good leader, you should be able to sort it out, everything for the people.
It's the lies, there's the backstabbing, and there's everything that's going on. And
all parties?
From all parties, yeah. So for the first time in my life, I'm really unsure of myself.
Sir Keir Starmer, is he the next Prime Minister?
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised.
What would you want to hear from them?
Good question. Yeah.
Is there anything that they could...
No, because I wouldn't believe what they said. They will tell you everything's going to be good with them. They're going to tell you that they're more in tune with people of this area. And I don't believe they are.
What would you ask the party leaders?
To pull their finger out. I'm waiting to be persuaded. I'm open to persuasion, so...
Dave works here with one of his sons, Elliot, who has his own young family to support.
We know a lot of it's just a facade.
From
the politicians.
Politicians across the board?
Yeah, that's it, yeah. Yeah, but either side, you know, it's trying to sell you a story when you've not asked for it. So, they don't look strong, stood there speaking, they're just bickering at each other. You know, they're not trying to actually make progress for the country. So people want to see a actual physical change, not just we might do this or we're going to do this, you know, at the end of their term.
That's a deep-rooted problem. The way that politics is set up means that people up and down the country need a proper sales pitch if they're to buy into anything. Tom Parmenter, Sky News, Cleethorpes.
Junior doctors put healthcare firmly on the election agenda today, announcing a 5-day strike in the lead-up to polling day as part of their long-running dispute over pay. The Conservatives called on Labour to condemn the industrial action, but Labour chose to focus instead on their pledge to cut England's NHS waiting lists. All the way through this election campaign, we'll be checking the party's promises and testing them out. So how do Labour's pledges on the NHS stack up? Here's Sky's Tom Clark.
Introducing Labour's plans to tackle NHS wait times, Keir Starmer said when elected, we'll be responsible for dealing with nearly 8 million on the waiting list. It's never been that high, with Wes Streeting, Shadow Health Secretary, claiming if the Tories stay in power, we'll see NHS waiting lists as high as 10 million. Well, Starmer's certainly right about the first claim. Under the Conservatives, the waiting list has exceeded previous records, now standing at 7.5 million cases, equivalent to about 6.3 million people. But the claim the waitlist could hit 10 million if Rishi Sunak stays in power is pretty dodgy. Labour have drawn a straight line through the highest waiting list growth rate under Mr Sunak's premiership and extended that trend onwards. But this ignores the fact numbers have now started to fall and the impact of addressing existing plans to reduce wait times. But that to one side, Labour's key pledge is that by the end of the first term of a Labour government, we can restore NHS waiting time standards to 18 weeks. Well, here's that 18-week target for an appointment for treatment, and it's not one that's been met since 2015. To be fair to the Tories, they were dealing with the fallout from the pandemic, but waits were still rising for a long time. So how will Labour restore this? Well, according to Keir Starmer, one of the first things we do is have 40,000 extra appointments every week. Labour says they'll do that by having more appointments on evenings and weekends and buying more equipment like scanners. But the challenge is one appointment doesn't necessarily clear one case from the waiting list. So Labour's 40,000 extra equates to this bar in red. That doesn't go a huge way to closing this gap between the number of people joining the waiting list and those leaving it. The fact the NHS is recruiting more hospital doctors and nurses will help, but to deliver 40,000 extra appointments, Labour will have to persuade those staff to work less social hours and pay them accordingly. Given ongoing pay disputes and burnout amongst NHS staff, that's easier said than done. But Starmer sounds confident, saying the last Labour government said it would get wait lists down and did it. But the last Labour government had less of a backlog to clear and also took a decade to do it, not a single parliament. So Keir's pledge to hit the 18-week wait time target might be achievable, but it relies heavily on the goodwill of those working in the NHS to deliver on it.
Well, they've heard the evidence and the lawyers' arguments. Now it's up to a jury to decide whether the former US President Donald Trump is guilty of any of the 34 criminal charges against him. He's accused of falsifying records to hide hush money payments to a porn star. Our US correspondent James Matthews joins us now from New York. James, the jury have been deliberating. There's obviously enormous anticipation for any kind of decision on this case.
Yeah, and it will go into tomorrow at least, Barbara. They went out at 11:28, having had instruction from the judge on points of law, the burden of proof beyond reasonable doubt, and the alleged crime which they will deliberate over. They were out for about 4 hours before they came back with notes for the judge, questions. They want to have their memories refreshed on specific testimony related in large part to David Pecker, the first witness, former publisher of the National Enquirer magazine. He's the man, the old pal of Donald Trump, who met him in Trump Tower and said he would be his eyes and ears, that he would operate a catch and kill scheme to catch negative stories about Donald Trump and kill them, pay for them and bury them so they wouldn't enter into the public arena and be damaging to Trump. Specifically, they wanted information or to have a reread of some of the evidence around his meeting with Trump and Michael Cohen, the former fixer to Donald Trump. They met in Trump Tower, at which Pecker said, "I'll be your eyes and ears." So that was seen by the prosecution as the meeting where the hush money scheme was hatched. It's not irregular, untypical at all for a jury to have questions for the judge. It does lengthen the process. It is a complicated set of charges and, of course, a complicated personnel involved in this particular case, specifically the man in the dock. We heard from Donald Trump after the jury was sent out to deliberate. Let's have a listen to some of what he had to say.
In listening to the charges from the judge, who's, as you know, very conflicted and corrupt, because of the confliction, very, very corrupt. Mother Teresa could not beat these charges. These charges are rigged. The whole thing is rigged. The whole country's a mess.
There you go, Donald Trump articulating the words Mother Teresa, not often heard inside the criminal court building in Lower Manhattan. He's still in that court while prosecution, defence and judge pour over the questions that the jury have presented them with. I might say Donald Trump isn't the only headline act inside the building. Harvey Weinstein, the Hollywood mogul, who of course was convicted of rape and sexual assault, had that conviction overturned. He's in the building today for a hearing connected to his retrial. We're told that although they're in the same building, they are on separate levels of the criminal court building, so they won't meet. But, you know, big names inside the court building, big decisions to be made, a decision-making process that will go into tomorrow at least.
Is there, to say the least. James Matthews with the latest from New York. James, thank you. Israel's national security advisor says he expects the conflict against Hamas in Gaza to go on for at least another 7 months. The warning comes after a renewed assault on the city of Rafah, where Sky News has verified that a weapon used by Israel in a devastating strike on Sunday was American-made. Our U.S. correspondent Mark Stone reports from Washington.
Beyond the images of the destruction in Gaza is this, the endless struggle. Along the coastal road, a constant shuttle, north to south and back again. Families with all they own on the move, on repeat, looking for safety. On the edge of Rafah, the scene of such horror from Sunday night is now a distraction for the children here, while everyone else collects what they can to move on and set up somewhere else. There is no clarity still behind precisely what happened here. The Israelis say they are investigating. The Americans say they will wait before passing judgment. But Sky News has verified that the weapons used in the attack which led to all this were US-made precision-guided bombs. Images taken in the aftermath show a small distinctive bolt on the tail of one of the two bombs. And the serial number here confirms this part was made by Woodward, a US manufacturer based in Colorado.
It's quite clearly a GBU-39, which is an American Boeing-produced glide bomb. It's got a relatively small warhead, but you've got to take into consideration the environment. They're going to have cooking fuel, gas canisters, could easily initiate a fire, which will just rip through this area.
The Israelis claim that the damage and the deaths were caused by secondary explosions, but have yet to publish their full investigation. The fact that it was a smaller, precise weapon allows the Americans to insist that the Israeli objective met Biden's demands and didn't cross his red lines. Still, the pressure on America diplomatically is huge. And as the UN prepares for yet another ceasefire vote, their language is shifting a little.
Words cannot capture the sense of loss the families whose lives were shattered by this tragic incident. The continued pattern of significant civilian harm resulting from incidents like Sunday's airstrikes undermines Israel's strategic goals in Gaza.
We have no better friend, and I mean it, than Senator Lindsey Graham.
But Netanyahu knows that for America, as it is for him, it is of course all about politics. Powerful Republican senators like Lindsey Graham make it very hard for President Biden to shift position. Nikki Haley has been in Israel too. Once Donald Trump's UN ambassador, she sent her own personal message for Hamas. Back in Gaza, the latest images show the IDF's chief of staff east of Rafah city. Brigades are mounting beyond, pushing President Biden's red line further and further. Mark Stone, Sky News in Washington.
The family of a woman stabbed to death on a Bournemouth beach have described her as amazing, funny and kind. A 20-year-old is in police custody after Amy Gray, who was 34, was killed on Friday night. Sabah Chowdhury reports now from Bournemouth.
Amy had a giggly laugh and a big smile. The words of a grieving family trying to make sense of the loss of a 34-year-old wife, mother and daughter. Amy Gray was murdered here at Bournemouth Beach last Friday night. The coroner confirmed her cause of death was multiple stab wounds. A 38-year-old woman also suffered serious injuries in the attack and is recovering in hospital. In an emotional tribute, Amy's mother, Sharon Macklin, said, "She was beautiful inside and out, and there are no words that can express how empty our lives will be without her. We will miss her so much, and our hearts are forever broken." Amy's wife, Sian Gray, said, "Words cannot describe the pain that we feel. Amy was the most loving wife and mother." She added, "Amy was a larger-than-life character. I will miss you immensely, my love," she said, "to the moon and back, forever and always." Police have described this investigation as moving at speed. They've already questioned and released a 17-year-old from Lancashire. As another day goes by, police have renewed their appeal for more information about what happened on this beach last bank holiday to not only reassure the public, but also to bring some level of comfort to Amy's grieving family and friends. None of which lessens the pain for those she left behind. Sabah Chowdhury, Sky News in Bournemouth.
A person has died after falling into an aircraft engine at Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam. The airport described it as a horrible incident and said its thoughts go out to the relatives. They also said they were caring for passengers and colleagues who saw what happened. A 12-year-old boy and his father have gone missing while hiking in the Scottish Highlands. 49-year-old Tom Parry and his son Richie were visiting the Glencoe area when they failed to return to their car. Police say extensive searches are ongoing. North Korea has flown more than 200 balloons carrying rubbish towards South Korea using hot air balloons. Now, it appears to have been in retaliation against South Korean activists for flying propaganda leaflets across the border. The South's military has sent chemical and explosive response teams to recover the balloons. There's been a high turnout in South Africa in an election which could challenge the 30-year dominance of the African National Congress. The ANC began as a liberation movement and won power on a wave of hope in the first post-apartheid election in 1994, with Nelson Mandela as its leader. The party has governed the country since then, with current President Cyril Ramaphosa the leader since December 2017. But there is growing discontent, with 1 in 3 people unemployed and half of young people out of work. In what could be a pivotal moment for the country, more than 27 million people were eligible to vote for 52 parties. Our Africa correspondent, Yusra El-Bagir, has been following the election throughout the campaign and reports now from Johannesburg.
An orderly way to enact change, fought for through riots and armed resistance. 30 years since black South Africans voted for the first time, it still never gets old.
My vote is my right, is my say. For what is going to happen, which is going to go wrong, I have a say on it.
Do you feel like anything has changed since 1994?
It's little bit changed, but not. It's little bit changed, but not like I expected.
Voting means so much to people here. 30 years ago, the ballot brought them freedom, and today they're hoping it will bring much-needed change. The streets of Alexandra, one of South Africa's oldest townships, bear all the marks of bad governance. And many in this traditional ANC stronghold are turning away for the first time. Around the corner from where Nelson Mandela rented a room when he first moved to Johannesburg, the place he called the Dark City for its lack of electricity, where he had no house but still felt at home. With its ongoing power cuts and shacks, so much remains the same. And yet, so much has changed. The man some believe to be Mandela's preferred successor is now president and leading the push to keep the ANC in power.
And I have no doubt whatsoever in my heart of hearts that the people will once again invest confidence in the African National Congress to continue to lead this country.
Even if the ANC does manage a parliamentary majority, many young people are exploring other options.
We don't know how things are going to turn out. We are hoping that they will not have like a majority like before, but share power with another party, so there can be a lot of accountability.
I'm a first-time voter, and I voted because I wanted freedom in our country. I want a brighter future for the kids in our country, the young ones, and a better learning for them.
Just across the motorway, residents of Sandton gathered to vote too, an area called the richest square mile in Africa. And the difference is stark.
It doesn't feel good because I have all the luxuries, everything that I want. But there are people down the road who don't have water, who don't have electricity, who live in absolute abject poverty and unhygienic circumstances. And it's just not acceptable.
30 years on, privilege still feels like a birthright, and equality, a pipe dream. But the right to vote remains, a way to hold power to account. Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky News, Johannesburg.
An Icelandic volcano has begun erupting again for the 5th time since December. Authorities had warned again of a risk of volcanic activity on a peninsula close to the capital, Reykjavik. Sky's Alice Porter has more.
A wall of molten rock stretching for 1.5 miles, and it's growing. The eruption began on the Reykjanes Peninsula in the southwest of Iceland, following a series of earthquakes. Lava has been shooting up 50 metres from an enormous crack in the Earth's surface, while huge plumes of ash have covered the sky. It's the 5th eruption in the area since December, but scientists believe many more could be on the horizon.
You could say that 8 times in such a short period of time is like a new era in that area. And that was not expected like 45 years ago, but now we are getting quite used to it.
The popular Blue...
Let's take you straight to New York, where Donald Trump is speaking outside the court. Let's listen in.
But take a look at the list, and because of the gag order, I won't go down into individual names. But you have a lot of big players, very big players, that would have solved their problem or actually would have given us the win. We already have the win. If we had a fair judge, this case would have been over a long time ago. But a lot of key witnesses were not called. Look at your list. Look at the players. And you know who I'm talking about. You can take 5 or 6 of them. Why didn't they call those witnesses? They didn't call them because they would have been on our side. And it's a shame. And in particular, one witness who's now suffering gravely because of what's happened, because of the viciousness of these thugs. The vicious people, what they've done to that person. And you know who I'm talking about. And they didn't call him as a witness. They didn't call anybody as a witness. And all these people they could have called and solved the problem. The other thing, the confusion is, nobody knows what the crime is, because there's no crime. Nobody knows what the crime is. The DA didn't name the crime. They don't know what the crime is. That's what the problem is. It's a disgrace. This thing ought to be ended immediately. The judge ought to end it and save his reputation. Thank you very much.
Are you happy with the lawyers? What do you think about the jury tonight? Sound like a murderer?
That was Donald Trump speaking there outside court where the jury has been deliberating today. He is, of course, accused of falsifying business records. Very strong words from him, talking about the viciousness of thugs. He is, of course, claiming he is innocent of the accusations. And that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's papers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by the Daily Mirror's associate editor, Kevin Maguire, and the Daily Mail's Whitehall editor, Claire Ellicott. Welcome both. Among the stories we'll be discussing this on the front of the Telegraph, the headline, Abbott will not be intimidated by Starmer. We'll be right back.
day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Tanks, heavy vehicle.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
They want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first.
This is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. First, though, our top stories. The veteran Labour MP Diane Abbott has angrily accused Sir Keir Starmer of trying to stop her standing in the election. He insists no decision has been made. Israel has warned the war in Gaza could last into next year as Sky News has seen new evidence suggesting a US-made weapon was used in a devastating strike in Rafah. And the jury in the trial of former US President Donald Trump has begun considering its verdict. He denies hiding hush money payments to a porn star. Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with the Daily Mirror's associate editor, Kevin Maguire, and the Daily Mail's Whitehall editor, Claire Ellicott. They'll be joining us from now until just before midnight. So let's take a look at what is on some of those front pages. Well, The Guardian leads with Diane Abbott defying Sir Keir Starmer as she promises to remain an MP as long as possible. The Telegraph also focuses on Diane Abbott's rally in her constituency this evening. And Abbott also leads The Eye. The Express, meanwhile, leads with Chancellor Jeremy Hunt warning Labour cannot be trusted with the economy. The Metro hears that junior doctors are being accused of cynically timing their next strike to coincide with the election. According to the Financial Times, as the war in Ukraine continues, NATO is concerned that it only has 5% of the resources it needs to defend Eastern Europe. The Daily Mail leads with an exclusive new report about the Lord Lucan mystery. And The Star has news of North Korean military balloons with a unique filling that I think you can guess from the headline and that I'm too much of a lady to read out loud. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the program, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Kevin Maguire and Claire Ellicott. Thank you both so much for being with us. OK, so let's take a look at, I guess, both The Eye and The Telegraph. But there is one story dominating, and that is, of course, Diane Abbott. She was speaking in her constituency earlier tonight. This is the issue of whether she will be allowed to stand as a Labour candidate. She's saying she will stand. She's saying she will not be intimidated. Kevin, what do you make of what's happened and what impact do you think this has on Labour right now?
I think it's a problem, a growing problem for Keir Starmer and Labour. On the one hand, it takes the oxygen away from what they would like to talk about. Today it was the NHS cutting waiting lists. Tomorrow, I think, antisocial behaviour, rowdy behaviour, tackling that. And the second is it's almost got left and right uniting against Labour, and it looks terrible and control freakery. Now, if we are to believe what's come out so far, she thought she had a deal whereby the whip would be restored. I don't know why it's taken more than a year to restore it. She made offensive remarks about Jewish people, Irish people and travellers, for which she apologised almost immediately. She went on an anti-Semitism course, so it's not a case of somebody's been accused of a sex crime where you have to investigate a long time. It was quite clear her crime in the draft letter going to the Observer, and she admitted it. But it looked like they were going to give her the whip back. She wouldn't stand, and then she'd retire with dignity. But it leaked to the Times, and now she's saying she'll stand as an independent if they don't let her stand as a candidate. And that Keir Starmer took hours to say she hasn't been blocked. It hasn't been blocked yet. Or will there be a U-turn? Because it's an awful look when she was the first black woman MP, 1987. She's 70 now, not in the best of health, it's got to be said. But there's a feeling, and you saw in that protest, that she's being treated very, very unfairly.
Claire?
Yeah, I mean, Keir Starmer's come out today and said that she hasn't been barred from standing, that no decision has been made. We're a couple of weeks away from an election. You know, they have to decide on the candidates imminently. Yeah. And Diane Abbott doesn't know whether she'll be standing as a Labour MP as of tonight. And that just seems disorganised at the very least. Keir Starmer's obviously led this fight against the Corbynistas, the left-wingers in his party. Jeremy Corbyn is already having to stand as an independent because he's lost the Labour whip. Diane Abbott lost the Labour whip. There are suggestions, as Kevin said, there was some deal done whereby she'd get the Labour whip restored, but that she would kind of stand down with dignity and that would be the end of the matter after she made these offensive comments. But she's clearly come out fighting. She said she won't be intimidated. All of the briefing, I think, because it was briefed to different papers, what exactly the situation was, I think has served this kind of idea that she has been poorly treated. And it's, you know, it's utter chaos for the party.
It's interesting, the phrase, Kevin, before I come to you, let's just look at the front page of the Daily Telegraph, which it's that quote, I will not be intimidated, by Starmer. And she spoke quite passionately when she was at the constituency earlier.
No, absolutely. We don't have from her that there was a deal, which was reneged on and gone public. So there's a little health warning around that. But no, she says now she'll stand as an independent. Now, party leaderships usually hate it when somebody is saying, look, I'm gonna go against you if you don't back me.
Very rarely win, though.
Yeah. Well, there's a big majority in Hackney. You know, she's not entirely popular. There are people who oppose her, but she has a big following. And a lot of Labour figures feel she's being treated unfairly. I just quoted here Sadiq Khan in the Telegraph, Jess Phillips. I know Yvette Cooper has before, the Shadow Home Secretary, who'll be out, I think tomorrow, fronting the Labour campaign, has said she hopes she'll be back in. A lot of them think she should be back in, and she's been treated unfairly, and I think it is a problem. If I was advising Starmer, I would say just swallow your pride, rein in your attack dogs, and let us stand if the local party wants
Because, of
her.
course, it takes focus away from policy. So let's take a look at the Daily Express front page. The headline, you've buckled, Hunt's win as Labour back down on tax rises. Now, Labour saying they won't raise some taxes, but Claire, tell us what's behind the story.
This is one of those very election campaign stories.
That's what we're here for.
The Tories have come out and said that they've looked through everything that Labour have said on taxes, and Rachel Reeves has said, the Shadow Chancellor has said, she won't play fast and loose with people's money, that they won't be putting up taxes. But the Tories claim that they've spotted a little kind of trend with Labour not entirely ruling out VAT increases. Now, tonight, there's been a bit of a row. The Tories have said, oh, Labour are going to put up VAT. Labour have come back and said, absolutely, we're not putting out VAT. And then the Tories are like, well, clearly you've changed your policy because we've confronted you about it. So there's this big, huge tax row going on.
Because they specified no income tax rises, national insurance and corporation tax. Right?
Yes, and so there's the wording around VAT, because Rachel Reeves has been asked, and Darren Jones, who's also as Treasury Minister, have been asked about whether or not they will increase VAT, and they've given kind of answers that haven't always been taken as definitive. So the Tories claim they've, forced Labour to now go back on their policies.
Raising VAT is a Tory policy. David Cameron and George Osborne put it up from 17.5% to 20%. 12 billion took in straight off 2010. I'm old enough to remember when Margaret Thatcher abolished rates of 8 and 12.5 and put it up to 15%. Labour will put it on private school fees to fund 6,500 extra teachers in the real public schools. But Labour, it's just not in the Labour DNA to put up the rate, really. It's other things they would put up if they were going to. But I actually think Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, to reassure people, has boxed herself in too tightly on so many taxes.
Let's see what the Conservatives are saying. Times, pages 6 and 7. Sunak, I'm confident we will ease the tax burden. So what's he specifying here?
Well, he's just hot air.
Yeah. So he's been out campaigning today, and I think he's given this interview, and I think the message of the interview is that interest rates will fall under a future Tory government. So the idea is that the economy gets better, the Bank of England will continue to cut rates, homeowners will be in a better position when they're remortgaging, and that everything will look better. He's pledged before, he's done 2 national insurance cuts. He said in this interview that he wants to do more, and that he wants to lower the tax burden on working people. So this is his another one of his pledges to the country, that interest rates will fall. But it's quite a strange thing for a former Chancellor to say, obviously, because
it doesn't entirely control them, but the tax burden's gone up to a post-war record of more than 36% under him. And so I think they always try to distract attention from what they've really done by always promising something tomorrow. But if you look at the plans so far, Labour have come up with a few new policy proposals and spending very little, but all of a sudden we're getting £2.5 billion national service from the Conservatives, and pensioners not going to have to pay tax because he's free, given an exemption really from the freezing the personal allowances for everybody else, which is £2 billion they'd put. So how's he going to cut tax when he's spending so much money?
Yeah.
If he is indeed spending
Another 5 years.
I know. We'll never find out, though, will we? I mean, according to this polls, including the Sky poll tonight, I don't think we're going to find out.
Let's take a look at the front page of the Metro. Now, here's a story that arguably none of the parties wanted. The junior doctors announcing that they're going to hold another 5-day strike, June 27th to July 2nd, so literally 2 days before polling day. Headline there, cynical election doctor strike. Is it cynicism, Kevin?
Well, they can legitimately say that they've not had an offer, so that's why they're going on strike. But it's the biggest headache, I think, for the UK Conservative Party because it's on their watch. Yeah. But it's also a problem Labour would have loved resolved by the Conservatives before they get in, because Wes Street and the Shadow Health Secretary, should Labour win and he becomes the Health Secretary, is going to inherit the problem. He said, I'm not going to pay, I can't pay 35%. Well, it's actually not 35 anymore because it's pay parity, the loss of inflation more than a decade, but they've already had, was it 10, 11% of it? Yeah. So you could bring it down, but nevertheless, he's going to have to try and find a way, because you are not going to reduce waiting lists when you have 40% of doctors going on strike.
Which, of course, was their big announcement today.
Yeah.
Waiting list.
Yeah, but you can't do it unless you resolve this dispute, however you do it.
Yeah. And Starmer's said that he wants to resolve this, and that Labour will resolve it if they get into government. But, you know, the junior doctors have consistently asked quite a lot of money, and they are one of the few unions that haven't come to an agreement with the government so far. A lot of the other union strikes have been sorted out. And this is the one where they continue to go on strike. And I think they're seen as a far more militant union than a lot of the other unions. And they're asking for a lot of money, and Labour have admitted they can't even pay that much money. But it is very bad to have this during an election campaign when you're campaigning on waiting.
Labour will inherit train strikes, true, with the Asliff train drivers. That's going to be unresolved. That's going to be...
Well, let's finish on what is becoming a tradition in the paper review, a slightly comical picture of Ed Davey. Yesterday he was pulling off a high hat into Windermere, and now he's on a bike. Does it work? This is a question for... I mean, you know, I guess the Lib Dems have to try to get the headlines. Do these gimmicky things work, Claire?
I mean, he gets
he's there and we're talking about him.
Is he the man you want to be your Prime Minister? I don't know.
He looks like Frank Spencer. Do you remember that hapless bloke? But it does work if it gets him in. Otherwise, it'd be Lib Dem corner in about 20 words.
And the thing is, name recognition is actually one of the biggest problems for all politicians. No one knows who anyone is apart from the very, very top few.
So we're actually watching him fall off the paddleboard. Just there, that was yesterday.
Chucking himself, I think, fall.
Yes.
I think this was
making a splash.
This was such a mad stunt because they were campaigning about, you know, sewage being pumped into Lake Windermere, and here he is falling in the water.
Well, he clearly hasn't got diarrhea from it if he's on his bike, unless he's taken something, Imodium or another brand, to stop him.
Which takes us back to the Daily Star headline. Anyway, for the moment, thank you both. Stay with us. Coming up, are Taylor Swift fans forcing homeless people out of hotels ahead of her concert in Scotland? We'll discuss that next.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles. We aim to be the best and the most trusted place for news.
I'm Martin Brunt, and I'm Sky's crime correspondent. We take you to the heart of the stories that shape our world.
I'm Helen Ann Smith. I'm Sky's Asia correspondent, and I'm based here in Beijing.
We help you understand the world with us. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
Play Sky News.
From the Sky News Centre at 7.
Now that you're up to date, we can go into a bit more detail.
Things can change incredibly quickly.
Taken by surprise.
Have you ever known a moment like this in British politics before? Yes. Cheers.
We'll start with breaking news.
Let's get the latest on the ground.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview with me now, Kevin Maguire and Claire Ellicott. OK, let's go straight to the Times and page 3. Their headline, Swifties, Taylor Swift fans, obviously, push homeless out in rush for cities' hotels. And that's because she's starting her tour, I think first date in Edinburgh. And tell us more about this story, Kevin.
Yeah, with Murrayfield, the rugby ground, going to host 3 gigs, 200,000 people. And the allegation is homeless people are being kicked out of accommodation, so it can be sold on to Swift fans. And they've been sent by Taxi Cunt to Shelter Scotland as far as Aberdeen and Glasgow. And in one case, Newcastle over the border. The council is disputing anybody's been moved out for Swift, but in Edinburgh, apparently, a night's accommodation is averaging £686
wow.
because there are so many people going to want to see Swift, who is a huge phenomenon. And there'll be Swifties now about to have a go at us because, of course, anything to do with her you criticise, it just triggers them. She's not doing it directly, but it's happened before this with other people because there's a big pressure for accommodation. I'm afraid homeless and vulnerable people haven't got the cash and the weight, and they're relying on authorities to look after them.
Yeah. The Daily Mail, and this one for you, Claire, revealed the Crown's case against Lord Lucan. And the Mail here saying they've unearthed documents after 50 years.
Yeah.
It was a bombshell case as well.
Yeah, it's astonishing. So our associate editor, Stephen Wright, has uncovered the Crown's case that was supposed to form the basis of the murder trial. But of course, this never happened because Lord Lucan was never found after his children's nanny was bludgeoned to death and his wife was violently attacked. I think there was a blood-soaked car that was left, but police don't know what happened to him. You know, it spawned so many conspiracy theories. He went off to live in Goa. I think he was living in people kept seeing him in various places around the world.
Yeah.
But this new document, which has been, it's never been seen before, it's never been revealed before, it shows, it brings up a load of new leads. So there are I think there's a big network of friends who helped to cover up for him. There's loads of new witnesses, there's loads of new information. So I think it's going to form the basis of a series of articles and podcasts about uncovering more of this fascinating case that happened in the 70s. And it's kind of an enduring murder case that's never been solved, and everybody's fascinated
1975.
Yeah.
Yeah, the nanny died, he was going to kill his wife. Did he then jump off the ferry? Has he died since? Is he alive? A facial recognition expert, which the Mirror covered, thought somebody in Australia could be him. We've got a chief reporter, Andy Lyons, on the Mirror, who's fascinated by this case too. And it's got an enduring hold on people because it was high society, a brutal murder, and then what's believed to be the great conspiracy, but by very wealthy mates to help escape justice.
Right. Wow. It's fascinating.
It is.
Yeah. OK. Totally different, a bit of a gear change. Daily Star, front page, let's just bring it up. Third World War.
Oh, you've said it.
And so this is retaliation because from South Korea, they sent balloons with like propaganda leaflets, and so the North Koreans retaliated. How did they do that?
Sending drop tons of poop, as they put it. I mean, it's probably better that than a ballistic missile, actually, but it is a bit, seems very schoolboyish.
A little
Kim
bit.
Jong-un.
Looking at the newswires, it says it was rubbish and manure, and not necessarily...
That word you used.
We're going to have to leave it there. Claire, Kevin, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us. More at 11 o'clock.